All right, in this video, I've got to ask you, there's a lot of maintenance that goes on for a typical boat owner, but for a kayak owner, is there that much, preventative maintenance that you have to do? I mean, do you have to grease things or use dielectric grease on electrical connections or UV protectant, or is there much maintenance or preventative maintenance to make your kayak last as long as it possibly could?
I think it really depends on how you store your boat. So I think if you're keeping your boat outside, you're keeping it, in the elements, you're going to have to protect it better. You're going to have to put protectant sprays on it, wipe it down, clean it up, make it look nice, and of course cover it with a nice cover or a tarp.
Yeah, the sun is brutal.
The sun will tear apart your boat a lot faster, especially the fabrics. It'll dry rot things, and of course your plastics. But as far as the way I take care of mine, it's inside the garage at all times. So when I get done off the water, fresh water on the Mirage Drive, fresh water on the whole boat, I just rinse it down and just put it in the garage, and that's pretty much all I really do to keep it in top condition.
In perfect working order.
Exactly.
I mean, because I know you use yours a ton.
Every day.
And you're not afraid to get in places where you might get a few scratches and dings in it. But I mean, it's a pretty impressive piece of equipment for what it is.
Yeah, and if you are fishing, I mean, I fish every day just about, especially on the kayak. So you're going to, get dings. You're going to get scratches on it, and that's the whole point of having the boat. So you can pretty much beat the crap out of it.
It's rotomolded plastic that's not going to break down. I mean, it's basically, it's like being inside a giant Yeti.
Exactly.
It's indestructible. It's built for the wild.
And what you can also do too is, on my old Hobie, I had a gator guard, which is like a guard that goes on the front of the boat. So when you're putting it into your truck, if you're dragging it, it'll protect the front of the boat, so you don't scratch
gouging
things.
it.
Exactly. So you're not gouging the plastic.
So if you're wanting to know if you're going to be bogged down with a bunch of maintenance, it sounds like the answer is no. All right, chapter 4. This is all about kayak fishing techniques, everything from fish fights to casting technique, to basically how do you deal with even landing fish in a kayak. I mean, those are 3 questions I have. So one would be, let's just start off with fish fighting techniques. For me, if you're in a kayak and you hook a trophy size fish and it makes a run, how do you do that? Do you just power pull down and lay the wood to it and see if you can stop the fish, or what would be the answer? The short answer.
I do both. So last year I hooked a fish that was fairly large. I power pulled down. It got me too far out and the hook pulled out because the way the line was in the water and the grass and everything. So unless that fish is around structure, I'll power pull down and fight it from the boat.
Okay, so that's not much different than a skiff.
Very similar. And then as far as open water stuff, I'm gonna chase that fish. I'm gonna get right on top of it and I'm gonna chase after it, make sure he's not getting in anything that could possibly pop that hook out or he can get stuck on.
And you can keep maximum pressure by keeping the distance close.
Yes.
A little like tarpon fishing.
Really similar to tarpon fishing, same style of technique and everything like that.
All right, casting styles from this. I'm assuming most of the stuff is overhead casting with anything from a 6.5 to a 7-foot rod. What about skip casting? Is there an advantage to being seated low and being able to drive cast underneath mangroves or underneath docks and things like that out of a kayak versus standing in a bay boat?
You're low to the water, so it's going to make it a little bit easier for you to skip that bait under a dock, under a mangrove line. Obviously, you're going to take this pole off or at least lower it so you don't hit that.
Right.
But as far as skipping baits, it's really simple on the kayak.
It makes it that much easier. Now, the thing that I've seen on the beach tarpon fishing, and whether it be tarpon fishing or a sea kayak anglers catching snook on the beach, and they're big snook. How do you handle a big fish if you're sitting in here, he's got a mouth full of treble hooks? How do you deal with him boat side? I mean, it seems like a little risky to bring him in the boat with you.
Yeah. First off, I make sure that fish is not green. He's not angry.
That's
right
right.
next to the boat. Take your time with it. I have a small net.
I see that you've got a net here.
Yeah, so that makes it easier to scoop that fish up. With treble hooks, I usually grab the boga grip. So
and use a grip. I was going to ask if you use a fish grip or a boga grip or something like that, so that you can keep them at bay. I see you got it right here. You really have to be ready for everything.
You have to be ready because, I mean, I've had times where I've hooked a fish, get him next to the boat, and he's barely hooked. So you want to make sure you get him in the net as fast as you can before he makes that.
Or get him on the boga,
exactly.
one of the two. So those are 3 questions. And if you guys have any more questions for Redfish Jesse when it comes to handling or kayak fishing techniques that might interest you, just ask those questions in the comments below, and we'll be sure to get back to you. A couple of things about how you approach fish, because the obvious question to me and maybe to some of you would be, do those pedals make enough noise to push fish away where you can't approach them as quietly as you might be able to if you were paddling? That's question number 1. The other question is, what do you do? And this is an obvious one, hopefully for you all too, is these things extend below the hull of the boat by a good foot or so. What do you do when you get up in 8, 9, 10 inches of water where you're trying to throw into a hole or on the backside of a bar where there's a trough? How do you do that?
Good questions, and I'm going to try my best to answer them the best way I can possibly.
Okay.
As far as the fins making noise, I don't see a whole lot of difference as far as paddling and pedaling. I haven't had any fish usually spook around.
Right.
And the fish around here are fairly spooky just because they get pressured a lot.
That's right.
But there hasn't been fish that I feel like get scared with me pedaling around making a lot of noise or not.
Do you have more control with the pedals by being able to put enough resistance and rub up against the tide or the wind so that you can hold position almost like a trolling motor and still fish it hands-free because your feet are really holding you in place to be able to make casts?
Yes, I can turn this Mirage Drive completely around and I can pretty much pedal and keep myself in one spot and fish that school or fish that pothole without getting on top of the fish.
So it almost feels like a hovering technique that works.
Exactly.
Well, that's pretty cool. Is there ever a need to push pole something like this? Could you stick it? I mean, use a little ginny pole or something like that to be able to get back. Let's just say you had to go down a shallow creek. I'm just giving them a couple of scenarios. Because you know there's a little back bay pond back there, a marsh pond, but you have to go over water that's, let's just say, that deep, that you're not going to be able to use the pedals. How do you get back in there without getting out, I guess, and walking and pulling it in there, and then being able to fish an area that nobody else is going to be able to fish?
Well, the benefit to this Mirage Drive is I can put those fins almost like right up against the hole, and I can kind of lightly pedal to get in there.
Right.
Or if I want, I can put them all the way up, lock them in place, and either stand up and paddle or push pull.
Push pull in there.
Yep.
Wow. So those are some of the questions that always kind of like, I understand it, and I watch you guys out there on the flat, and trust me, you guys seem like you can do 4 or 5 knots in these things. You guys can cover a ton of ground. It's like there's not really a disadvantage to a kayak like this. If you're a serious angler, this is the kayak that you really truly want.
If you're fishing a lot, you're doing a lot of kayaking, I would recommend this boat.
Because you can cover so much.
You can cover a lot of water. That's my favorite part about this. I can go all day long and it doesn't tire me out.
That's good. That's great. Hey, I hope that these questions I'm asking are enough for you, but if they're not, ask more in the questions and comments below. All right, in this video, before it pours down rain here and we're able to float it off the truck here, I just want to ask Jesse, how convenient is it as a single kayak angler to be able to take a 14-foot kayak off the bed of your truck and be able to basically use it to fish?
It's really easy. On this boat, I have a set of tires that just clip right into the back of the boat. I can just clip it right in, slide the boat out real simple, and just take it right to my spot and do the same thing when I bring it back up.
And there's holes that are pre-done for this, so you just pick it up, put them underneath, tip this out, and then just wheel it.
Just go. It's reinforced.
Wheel it like a hand truck.
Exactly. That easy.
It doesn't get any simpler than that. But one thing we got to do, we got to get out of here before this rainstorm gets here. So I hope that little tip there helps you get your kayak in and out of your truck bed a lot faster, because we're leaving.